In the midst of a glittering gala, surrounded by the city's wealthiest elites, Sophie Harper never imagined she'd be the center of attention. A cleaning woman, she had no place in this world of luxury until an unexpected moment changed everything. Evan Blake, heir to a billion-dollar empire, spotted her across the room and felt something stir, something he couldn't ignore. What followed was an impossible connection that neither of them saw coming. As the night unraveled, Sophie's past collided with her present in the most shocking way, setting off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. But Evan wasn't just reaching out for a dance. He was reaching out for a family he never knew he had. The question is, can Sophie trust him, or will her painful past tear them apart? What would you do if your past came crashing into your future? The grand ballroom of the Regency Grand Hotel in Chicago shimmered under the soft glow of chandeliers. Tonight was the city's most anticipated charity gala, and the room was filled with the elite, wealthy, powerful, and impeccably dressed. The air buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses as the city's finest socialites mingled their sparkling jewels, catching the light. But there was one person who didn't belong here: Sophie Harper. Sophie, a 29-year-old cleaning woman, stood in the shadows behind a velvet curtain, her uniform of deep navy blue sharply contrasting with the glimmering gowns around her. She had been cleaning the ballroom earlier when the event began earlier than expected, and now she was stuck in the middle of an upper-crust world that felt like it belonged to someone else. She had no place here, yet fate had other plans. Sophie's heart raced as she tried to shrink into the shadows, but it was too late. The whispers started, the eyes turned. The icy voice of Celeste Whitmore, a notorious socialite, rang through the room. "What is this, an intruder?" Celeste sneered, her sharp gaze pinning Sophie in place. She pointed to the young woman with disdain, drawing the attention of everyone around. "Security, get this invader out of here!" Celeste's voice rang out, echoing through the vast hall. Sophie stood frozen, her face burning. She hadn't planned on being part of this spectacle, but now there was no way out. Her hand trembled as she reached for the delicate silver butterfly brooch pinned to her chest, a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother. It was her only treasure, a small piece of comfort in a world that never seemed to care. Before she could even respond, a familiar, commanding voice cut through the tension. "Vivian Blake," the voice called sharply as the matriarch of the Blake family, a powerful woman in her 60s, stepped forward. Her dark gown and diamond-encrusted jewels spoke of the wealth and influence she wielded with ease. "This is completely inappropriate, Sophie," Vivian stated coldly, her words aimed not only at Sophie, but at everyone present. The tension in the room thickened as eyes turned toward the unfolding drama. Sophie tried to maintain some semblance of dignity despite the cruel glares. Her thoughts turned to her grandmother's words whispered in her ear many years ago. "Those with courage in their hearts never dance alone." Sophie clenched her fists around the brooch, gathering her strength. "I work here," she said, her voice small but clear. "How convenient." Celeste chuckled mockingly, enjoying the spectacle she had created. As the wealthy guests surrounded her, Sophie stumbled backward, and in that moment her brooch fell from her grasp. It rolled across the polished marble floor, glinting under the grand chandelier's light, reflecting every eye in the room. Sophie's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and she felt utterly exposed. The room fell silent for a long moment. On the opposite side of the room, Evan Blake, the heir to the Blake Empire, watched the unfolding scene with an unexpected sense of discomfort. At 32, Evan had spent his life under the constant pressure of his family's vast fortune and expectations. But something about Sophie's situation disturbed him deeply. Something familiar. As he noticed the butterfly brooch shining on the marble floor, his heart skipped a beat. He walked toward it, ignoring the murmurs of the crowd. Some stepped aside to make way for him as he bent down and gently picked it up, feeling the warmth still lingering on the cold metal. The brooch had an odd familiarity to it, but he couldn't place it. He glanced at Sophie, her face pale with humiliation, her eyes averted. Without thinking, Evan extended his hand to her. "This is yours, isn't it?" he asked softly, his voice gentle yet strong. Sophie hesitated, her eyes still full of suspicion, but the warmth in his gesture disarmed her. "Thank you," she muttered, her hands trembling as they brushed against his when she took the brooch from him. There was a strange electricity in the touch, as if they had both felt something stir within them. Evan didn't let go of her gaze, his eyes searching hers as if trying to understand why she seemed so familiar. "What's your name?" he asked softly, the question lingering between them like an unspoken connection. "Sophie," she whispered, but her heart skipped when he repeated her name as if it carried a deeper meaning. The room around them seemed to fade away, and for a brief moment it felt like the whole world was suspended in time. "Sophie," Evan repeated, a sense of recognition washing over him. "Your name, it's familiar." Before Sophie could respond, Vivian Blake intervened, her voice sharp and dismissive. "Evan, please," she insisted. "We have other matters to attend to." But Evan was no longer listening to his mother. He ignored her as he bent down to offer Sophie his hand. "Let me help you up," he said, his voice steady and calm. Sophie stood up on her own, her body trembling from the intensity of the moment. But Evan's eyes stayed fixed on hers as if searching for something buried deep within. As he gently held her arm to steady her, he asked softly, "How old is your daughter?" Sophie froze. How did he know about her daughter? She hadn't told him. Her heart raced. "Luna," she finally whispered. "She's 7. The name echoed in Evan's mind, striking him with an unexplainable sense of familiarity. He couldn't place it, but something about Luna's name felt like a missing piece of the puzzle. Without thinking, Evan said, "I need to ask you something, Sophie. May I have this dance?" The room went silent. The billionaire playboy, known for his cold demeanor, asking a cleaning woman to dance in front of everyone. The shock was palpable, and the whispers started to spread like wildfire. Sophie stared at his outstretched hand, unsure, reluctant. But there was something in Evan's eyes, an earnestness she hadn't expected. "Please," he urged softly, "just this one dance." For a moment, Sophie considered refusing, but then she realized something deep within her heart had shifted. Slowly trembling, she accepted his hand. The orchestra began to play a soft waltz, and as Evan pulled her close, Sophie moved as if the music had taken over her body. The grace that flowed from her, the elegance she had hidden beneath the drudgery of her daily life, stunned everyone in the room. She wasn't just a cleaning woman. She was a woman with a past, a future, and a dignity she had almost lost. The crowd looked on in disbelief as the unlikely pair danced together, each step more fluid than the last. The dance floor had gone eerily quiet as Sophie Harper and Evan Blake glided across the floor, their every movement drawing the eyes of everyone in the room. It was as if time had stopped, just the two of them caught in a moment of delicate tension, with the soft music weaving around them like an invisible thread. The room watched in stunned silence. No one had ever seen anything like it. Evan Blake, the billionaire heir, dancing with a cleaning woman. Sophie's heart raced, but not just from the attention. There was something about Evan's presence that felt familiar, like a spark in her chest that had been long dormant. It wasn't just the way he looked at her. It was the way he made her feel like she wasn't invisible, like she mattered. But deep down, Sophie knew this wasn't just a chance encounter. There was something he wasn't telling her. She could feel it. As they twirled gracefully, the tension in her chest began to grow. Was this all a game to him? Was this some sort of charity, or was there more beneath the surface? She wanted to ask him, but the words seemed to lodge in her throat. Instead, she simply danced, her feet light, but her heart heavy. Evan, however, was lost in thought. As he held Sophie close, the familiar spark of recognition lingered. Her eyes. That name. Luna. Why did it feel like someone he'd once known? Clarinia. He could hear it echo in his mind like an old distant memory, but it felt like something more, something he couldn't fully grasp. When the music ended, the crowd erupted in hushed whispers. The applause was tentative, almost as if they weren't sure how to respond. Evan reluctantly let go of Sophie, his fingers lingering on hers just a little longer than necessary. She stepped back, her breath catching in her throat as she tried to steady herself. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice strained. Evan nodded, his jaw tight. "There's something about you, Sophie. Something familiar." His words were almost a confession, something raw and unspoken hanging between them. Sophie forced a smile, her heart pounding as she tried to make sense of everything. The way he looked at her, the way he seemed to know her but couldn't possibly remember. She needed to get away, needed to escape this suffocating feeling. "I should go," Sophie said, her voice quiet but firm. She stepped back, but Evan's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist gently but firmly. "Sophie," he said, his voice low, filled with urgency. "Please just tell me, how do I know you?" The question hung in the air, heavier than anything she had expected. Sophie's throat tightened, her mind racing with the answers she couldn't give. How could she? How could she tell him the truth when it hurt so much? She tugged her wrist free, pulling away from him with a shake of her head. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice trembling as she backed away. "I'm just a cleaning woman." This never happened. Before he could respond, she turned and walked quickly toward the exit, her pulse racing. She needed air. She needed to think. The ballroom doors slammed shut behind her, with a force that matched the chaos in her mind. But as she stepped out into the cool night air, the city of Chicago sprawling before her, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that Evan wasn't just a random stranger. There was something about him, something that tied him to her past, to the life she had left behind. She had walked away from him once, and now, after all these years, it seemed like he had found her again. Back inside, the chatter had picked up again, though the air was thick with whispers. Vivian Blake, Evan's mother, stood off to the side, watching her son intently. Her eyes narrowed, calculating as she observed the scene unfold. She had seen the way Evan looked at Sophie, the way he had hesitated. This wasn't just some simple dance. This was something more, something she wasn't willing to allow. "Evan," she said, her voice cutting through the noise as she approached him. "We need to talk." Evan's face hardened. "Not now, Mom. I'm not finished here." Vivian reached out, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. "No, you don't understand. This woman, this cleaning woman, she's not what you think. You can't afford to get involved with someone like her." Her voice was cold, calculated, as she spoke the words that were meant to push him away from Sophie. Evan shook her off, his eyes flashing with the same intensity that had been building in him all night. "What are you talking about? Who is she really?" Vivian took a step back, her face pale. She wasn't used to being questioned, especially by her own son. But this was different, and she couldn't let him get too close to Sophie. He had no idea how deep the connection really went, or just how dangerous it was. But Evan wasn't listening. His mind was already racing, piecing together the fragments of the evening. Sophie Harper. Luna Clarinha. Could it really be possible? Could she be the woman he had once loved, the one he had lost so long ago? His chest tightened as he realized that the answers were slipping just out of reach, and Sophie was the key. The following days passed in a blur for Sophie Harper. After her unexpected encounter with Evan Blake, everything seemed to have shifted. Her world, once defined by the small, quiet life she had created with Isla, now felt full of noise and questions she wasn't ready to answer. She didn't understand why Evan kept reaching out. He had found her, yes, but how could she trust him? How could she explain to him the years of pain, of heartbreak, of the decisions she had been forced to make? But deep down, she knew that Evan wasn't here by accident. There was something about him, something in his eyes that made her believe he was more than just a man with a wealth of money. He was someone who had known her, someone who might still care. But every time she thought of it, her heart clenched. Luna, her daughter. Sophie had fought for Luna's future, fought to give her the life she deserved. But would bringing Evan into their world destroy everything? The day after the gala, Evan called again. He was persistent, but there was something different in his tone. He wasn't demanding, just patient. "I need to see you again." His voice crackled over the line. "I have so many questions, and I feel like you're the only one who can answer them." Sophie closed her eyes, her breath catching in her chest. She had been avoiding his calls, avoiding his presence, but something inside her told her this was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, whether she wanted to admit it or not. With a deep breath, Sophie agreed. "Okay, I'll meet you, but only for a few minutes." Pedro. Evan waited for Sophie in the small, cozy cafe where they had agreed to meet, a place far away from the luxurious life he knew. His hands were clammy, his mind racing. He had to know the truth. He had to know if Sophie was the same woman he had lost years ago, if she could still be the one he loved. When she walked in, his heart skipped a beat. She looked the same but different, more guarded, more wary. And yet there was still that spark in her eyes, that same light that he remembered from the past. "Sophie," he said softly, standing to greet her. "I've been trying to figure out everything about you, about me, about Luna, but I'm not sure where to start." Sophie's eyes flickered. She hadn't expected him to open up so vulnerably. She had always seen him as this untouchable billionaire, a man of power and privilege. But here he was, sitting across from her, his voice soft and filled with uncertainty. It was disarming. "Why me?" Sophie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why now?" Evan leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Because I need to know if we can have a second chance. If Luna is mine. If we can be a family, Sophie." The words hit her like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about the future. It was about Luna, her daughter. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. "I never told you I was pregnant, Evan. I didn't know how to. Your mother, she manipulated me. She told me you wouldn't want a child." Evan's expression faltered. "My mother? She did that?" His voice was low, full of disbelief. "That wasn't what I wanted. You disappeared without a word. I thought you had left me." Sophie closed her eyes. "I was scared. I was alone. Your mother told me you didn't want me. She made sure I believed it." There was silence for a long moment as the weight of their words hung between them. Then Evan reached out, his hand covering hers. "I was a fool," he said softly, "but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving you again." Sophie looked up, her eyes filling with tears. She had spent so many years convincing herself that she didn't need anyone, that she could protect Luna alone. But in that moment, in Evan's touch, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: hope. The days that followed were filled with small steps toward rebuilding what had been broken. Evan took Sophie and Luna out on weekends, spending time together as if they were already a family. It wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight, but slowly Sophie began to trust again. There was still the lingering shadow of Vivian Blake, Evan's mother, and the deep sense of control she held over Evan's life. But Evan wasn't the same man he used to be. He was determined now more than ever to protect the family he had almost lost forever. He started to fight back against his mother, against the expectations, against everything that had kept him from Sophie and Luna. One evening, after a particularly moving dinner at their small apartment, Luna ran up to Sophie, her little hands outstretched, a drawing in her arms. "Look, Mommy," Luna said, grinning. "It's our family, you, me, and Evan." Sophie looked down at the drawing, a stick figure family, smiling, holding hands. She couldn't help but laugh, her heart swelling. Luna had drawn them as they truly were, imperfect but full of love. In that moment, Sophie knew. She knew that this was the family she had always dreamed of, even if it had taken a broken past to get here. Evan sat beside Sophie that night, his arm around her shoulders as they looked at Luna, who was already fast asleep, the drawing tucked under her pillow. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Evan asked quietly. Sophie nodded, her eyes soft with emotion. "We're doing the best thing. We're here, together." And for the first time in a long time, Sophie felt that her past no longer controlled her. Evan wasn't perfect, and neither was she. But together they had something worth fighting for. They had Luna, and that was everything. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What would you do if you were Sophie? Would you trust Evan and let him back into your life after everything that happened? Or would you walk away, choosing to protect your family on your own? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, comment 100 and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to share this video with friends who love a good drama with a heartwarming twist.